Greetings, fellow members of the Esoteric Order of Gamers. Are you ready for a huge joy of unboxing? Well, I've got Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings. It's a new tabletop miniatures game by Parabellum Wargames, and it looks fantastic. They kindly sent me all this stuff to check out. I'm going to be doing a huge series of videos on this stuff. We're going to be unboxing it now, and then later on I'm going to be putting the figures together, painting them, playing the game, and giving you my honest opinions of what I think of Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings. So let's get started. There's a whole lot of stuff to unbox here, so I really better get into it. Help! Help! It's alright, folks, don't panic. I'm alright. I survived. And here I am about to unbox the starter box for Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings. Look at all the stuff you get. It's huge and packed full of miniatures. About 75 miniatures, I believe. There's also movement trays, rules, all that kind of stuff. But let's check it out and have a look inside. Now, Conquest. Well, I stumbled across this game and I thought it looked really interesting. I do love tabletop miniatures war games, and this one seems to have really dived into the genre with this totally original world. Still with lots of, classic fantasy tropes, but original stuff. And also the company, which is based in Cyprus and has offices in Greece and the US, is doing everything themselves. The rules are designed by Alessio Cavatore, who used to work for Games Workshop and now has his own game design studio called Riverhorse. But apart from that, everything is done by Parabellum, and they've created their own techniques for producing the miniatures and putting everything together and distributing this worldwide. And also, it's quite reasonably priced compared to some of the huge competitors. Games Workshop, of course, are quite expensive. It looks like Parabellum are really in for the long haul, and they're churning out heaps of product. The question is, what's the game like and what are the miniatures like? Well, let's check it out. So we've got a rulebook here. This is the Rules of Engagement. Now, there's a PDF of this available online, so I've already started to look at the rules. Now, this is mass combat fantasy, so it reminds me a little bit of the old Warhammer Fantasy rules, but it comes with movement trays, so you're talking about formations and units. They're called war bands in this game. And the rules are pretty simple to start with. You can see they only go up to there. Small pages, plenty of space on the pages, nice layout. And then you've got some advanced rules there, so you can get more heavily into it, magic and all that kind of thing, even fortifications. There's a lovely world map, look at that, very nice. And you can see this is a lovely little book. Look at this beautiful art. And I love the size of it. This is really compact and really easy to look at while you're playing. You don't have to manhandle some huge book. Of course, because I'm covering this game on the Esoteric Order of Gamers, I'm going to be doing a rules summary. So I'm going to try and condense these rules into a few sheets, at least, the basic rules to start with. So there's our rules of engagement. Looks like we've got some unit cards here. And as you can see, more of that gorgeous artwork. It's got a bit of a sort of labyrinth, Brian Froud kind of feel, doesn't it? A nice sort of European fantasy feel. I really like this kind of style. Looks like these are various cards. I'm not sure what these do yet. These look like objective cards. There we go. So nice deck of cards there. We've got some six-sided dice. This uses six-sided dice, this game. And then it looks like we have a whole lot of miniatures. Oh, wow, look at all this. Oh my, it just keeps going on and on. Oh, wow, look at all, gee, that is impressive. Look how many sprues there are there. That is pretty impressive stuff. And I tell you, I was looking at buying this originally, and the retail price was pretty good for all the stuff you got. And look at this, a whole heap of movement trays. There's some really big ones too. That's probably for the horrible monsters. Heaps of trays. There's stands for each individual figure. So each figure goes on a stand, which then goes on one of these movement trays. Let's have a look at one of these. There we go. So In this game, as you kill units, they actually get removed from the stand. So each figure equals 1 wound, or whatever you want to call it. So a whole heap of stands there. And then all these amazing sprues. Let's check these out in more detail. Right, well, one thing you quickly notice when you pick up one of these sprues is that the scale of these figures is quite large. And they're setting themselves apart here by creating larger figures distinctive to this game. And of course, that should probably mean they can work a lot more detail into the miniatures. But they're very bold and really look nice. And as you can see, this is for experienced wargamers because they're all made up of individual parts which all fit together. And I'll be doing some tutorial videos on putting these miniatures together. There's some more cavalry. Now, in this starter set, we have a couple of factions. There's the 100 Kingdoms, which is the human faction. Oh, look at that. Nasty. Yes, the 100 Kingdoms, and then there's the Spires, which are sort of strange alien beings that live in these mysterious spires. Oh, this is nice and beautiful textured bases. Oh no, these are objectives actually. These aren't bases. These are beautiful, detailed, textured objectives, which is a really nice thing to see in a game. Got a good banner there as well. More cavalry. These look like the parts that make up this horrific, huge beast that's in the starter set. Really looking forward to putting these together. Oh, look, more bits for that beast. There's some legs. Detail looks nice. Now, when I first contacted Parabellum about this game, look at all these little bits we can put together into the troops. When I first contacted them, I talked to the managing director, who very kindly got onto Skype with me. We had a good old chat, and I was really impressed with the guy. He was very friendly, and we got along very well, and we discovered that we had a very similar upbringing when it came to games. He started off, however, a little bit later than me with Warhammer, and has been an obsessive tabletop gamer his whole life. And of course, like many of us, had the dream of creating his own game, and has actually gone on to do it. He's got big plans for this company and this game. As I said, they're churning out heaps and heaps of product. There are 4 factions already. There's the 2 I just mentioned, and there's the Nords, which is a sort of Viking barbarian kind of faction. And there's also the Dweghom, which are, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, but they are sort of fiery dwarves. And I was really impressed with his enthusiasm and excitement over this game. They really want this game to take off. And so he was very happy for me to talk about it and tell you all about it. So lots of construction to do there. As you can see, there's lots of little bits, but of course that's nothing new to players of Warhammer and games like that. They're used to putting all these together. But this is going to be quite a project. But don't worry, I will take you through the project as I do it myself, and we'll see what the end result is like. It's a little bit hard to tell from the sprues, but I'll put a few together for the end of this video so you can see what they look like. Well, as you can see, there's a heap of stuff in this starter set. There's 12 and a half sprues there, large size sprues. You've got your dice, your rule book, your cards, and you can see I've laid out the bases here. You can see each one of these has 4 figures in it. So just by looking at the bases, you can see how many figures you get in the starter set. It's a huge amount. These appear to be cavalry bases. We've got a monster one here, and then we've got all the infantry here as well. And it's going to make up some really impressive units. And this is just the starter set. Very good quality. Now, one thing I did notice, there are no assembly instructions in the box, but I visited the website and there are very clear 3D assembly instructions available there. You can download as PDFs to build all those. So they've saved a bit of money by not printing those and putting them in the box, but that's absolutely fine with me. I'd rather have more figures than things that I can easily print off or put on my iPad when I'm constructing them. So here's that shot of the back of the box again, and you can see all the figures that you get in the core set. There's that strange looking horrific otherworldly creature. These are the Spires, and here are the 100 Kingdoms, the human forces. So lots of work putting this together and painting them, but it's going to be great fun, and I'm really looking forward to playing the game. But wait, we haven't stopped yet. Yes, that was just the starter set. I've got a whole heap of extra stuff here. In fact, I've got samples from all of the 4 factions. That's the 100 Kingdoms, the Spires, the Nords, and the Dweghom. So let's have a look at some of those extra boxes. So if you're rounding out your armies, you'd be buying expansion sets like this one. An extra whole unit in a box, which is great. And you can see these 2 are for the 100 Kingdoms human forces. And I've been sent a selection of each faction, so I should have a good selection of the different types. So here we've got the Steel Legion, armoured knights. They look great. And then we've got the Imperial Officer here. So let's have a look inside these. I've got so much painting to do. It's a lot of fun though, I do enjoy it, and it's really nice to start a new game fresh and try something a bit different. Okay, we've got our bases there. You can see we've got 3 large movement bases, or 3 infantry movement bases I should say. You can see they're the standard bases there. We've got our card. This is interesting. Here's our unit card, and it's got one of these codes on it. So this is probably used as an activation card. I'll be going into the mechanics of this game in a lot more detail further down the track. But I wonder why that's a scan thing. I'll just scan it and see what I get. Right, it took me a little while to work this out, but there's a army builder online at the Parabellum website. And if you access it on your phone or device, you can get to this page and actually scan the card. Let's try doing it now. Here we go. There we go. It's scanned, and then it takes me to the page where we've got the latest stats for that unit. This allows them apparently to, you can still use this as a command card because you draw cards to decide on the order of units. But this allows them to keep things updated, and they don't have to replace cards and stuff like that. So it's an interesting system. I'm sure it'd be great to see that as an app. Doing it through the browser at the moment is a little bit clunky, but it's nice that they've integrated this with an online army builder, which is an interesting idea. Okay, let's look at the miniatures themselves for the Legion of Steel. I should say the Steel Legion. And here they are. Again, very multi-part kits to put all those little bits together, but we've got fully armed knights. Nice amount of detail there. There's a big sword. And they look quite unique. I don't know how many types are in each one. These are probably the same sprues, but there's enough variety to get a unit with a lot of visual variety to it. It's a very nice, very detailed banner there. Well, there you go. There's the Steel Legion. Now let's have a look at the Imperial Officer. This guy looks quite special. He looks like a resin figure. I've got his card there. And he comes on an individual base, of course. So I presume these can be just added to units. And there are the pieces. A body, 2 arms and a head. And some lovely detail there in the resin. Just a static pose, but well, it's all in the authority, isn't it? Right, next up I've got a couple of extra things for the Spires faction. First we've got the Marksman clones, who are a nice ranged unit with some very large bows. Let's have a look at these. Our bases as usual. Our card. And our sprues. Now it's great to see these lovely detailed banners coming with the units. Look at that. So you've got command figures with these banners, which is really nice. And then we've got 3 of these sprues to make up these ranged figures. And as you can see, the detail is excellent. Now, when I was talking with Parabellum, they did say that all the stuff that I'm showing you represents just 4 months worth of releases. So they're still a young company and they're really churning out new stuff. But he did also say that the starter set was the first thing they did, and the quality of the miniatures has improved significantly since that starter set was made. So while the figures in the starter set are good, you can really see there's a lot more detail appearing as they really get into the technology of making plastic figures, because they've set up their own system to make all these plastic miniatures. They're not using some third-party provider. So just a closer look at what that unit will look like. I might go for a more bone look, I think, for the Spire rather than the white look. Of course, you can come up with your own colour schemes. Next, I've got this leader figure, the High Clone Executor. I quite like the artwork there is lovely. I actually like the bone look they've got on the whole figure. This one's been painted with a more fleshy colour, which I don't quite like as much, so I might paint it in that style. And again, this is a resin figure. There's our card. And as you can see, this is a completely resin figure with a couple of head options. Okay, let's look at a whole new faction. So we've had the 100 Kingdoms, which are the human forces that are in the core set. We've had the Spires, which are the aliens that use clones, and they're also in the core set. Now this is a separate faction, a completely different one. It's a sort of dwarven faction. They're called the Dweghom. And they're also sort of very violent and very fiery dwarven types. So let's check out what we've got here. I've got 2 sets of Hold Warriors and Hold Ballistae, an Inferno Automata set and a Flame Berserker set. So let's start with these Hold Warriors. And as you can see, they look great, a really solid unit of dwarves. There's a picture of one of them. They look good. Now, one thing I've really noticed about these miniatures is, you know, they're not the kind of fine detail of Games Workshop miniatures, but also this is a mass battle ranked kind of game, so you really want your forces to look good in a chunky unit like this, all ranked together, and I think they work really, really well in that context. They're really sort of solid, meaty kind of figures, especially dwarves, of course. So we've got our Hold Warriors. And here's the Ballistae ranged unit. Our bases. There's a nice banner there and some kind of shield. And then here, 4 sprues. Really liking these big, chunky, square shields. Look at those, very dwarven. Those heads look great, braided beards. Some interesting looking weapons there. And of course you've got your crossbows. All these shields seem to have different designs on them, which is nice. I think this is going to be a great looking unit. There's a lot of character in those heads. Again, I'll be showing you some of these put together a bit later on. This is just to give you an idea of what the sprues look like. So there you have it. Got a couple of boxes of those, so they'll make up a couple of really nice meaty units. Then we've got these Inferno Automata. Automata? I've been saying automata, haven't I? I should be saying automata. Oh my goodness. It's one of those words that trips me up every single time. Now, these are weird looking things. They're like sort of flamey, robot-y things. Look at that. I'm actually looking forward to painting these. These ones have been painted with what looks like an airbrush on the flame, and I don't think that's quite as effective. Painting that by hand I think will look a lot better. These guys have big bases. There's the card. 3 sprues in here. We've got some flaming skulls. Some strange looking toothy breastplates. Robot-y hands. It's a very unusual unit. Well, it's hard to tell from the sprues, but I'm sure these are going to be very interesting when I put them together. There you go. The next box is these flame berserkers, who seem to be big sort of dwarfy figures with flaming heads. Mastering the element of fire, apparently. Great artwork. It's a little bit trickier to see the detail in this white plastic. But these look quite nice. There's a weapon, a few torsos, very nice stylized banner. I really have to undercoat these ones because it's very difficult to see how they're going to go together, especially with this white plastic, which is a little tricky. So they need priming for that detail to come out, but the design looks lovely. Here's the first of the hero figures. This is the Tempered Sorcerer. Again, a resin figure. Oh, and this is an absolutely gorgeous multi-part resin figure. Look at the detail there. Very sharp. That's going to be great. And finally for the Dweghom, we've got this Ardent Carraweg. And look at the detail on that. Just gorgeous. And there's some other pieces, a back piece there, a weapon. Lovely detailed resin. Okay, the last faction I have here. Wow, so much stuff. I've got 2 boxes of raiders. These are all the Nords, which are sort of a barbarian northern race. 2 boxes of raiders, stalkers here. We've got a mountain Jotnar, which is a huge giant. That looks fantastic. And we've got a couple of heroes as well. So let's get started off with the raiders here. This is what they look like. It's an impressive bunch of barbarians. And look at that banner too. I love these big banner designs. They're fantastic. They'll look great on the tabletop. And these are more recent figures. You can see there's even more detail than the ones in the starter set. I think the figures are getting better and better as they go along. And this is only over a period of months, so you can imagine the stuff that's coming out in the future is going to be great. Talking about stuff that's coming out in the future, during that chat I had with Parabellum, they pointed out that they also want a lot of feedback from the players of this game as to which factions are going to come out next and the development of the game. So there's going to be a lot of interactivity with players of the game to decide what's going to come out next, which is pretty exciting. And here we go. Look at the detail on that. Very nice indeed. Huge strides forward. I think we're going to be seeing some really lovely figures coming out from this company. I'm really quite excited about this. Really looking forward to putting these together into their units and getting them on the tabletop. And also, it would be really nice to play what is a sort of rank and file type game again. Everything these days is very skirmish level with individual figures on round bases. This is going back to those good old days of, having your units together on movement trays and moving them around and manoeuvring them. And the advantage with that, of course, is that movement becomes a very important part of the game because you have to really get your forces into the right position for that moment when they finally meet. And I will go into the rules in more detail later on, but also your forces start off the table and they come in on the table in order from light to heavy, and so there's a lot of room for manoeuvring. Here's that wonderful banner. There's another piece here that goes on it. Very barbarian looking. And there's another sprue as well. There's 3 main sprues and the banner sprue. Well, they look great. Next up I've got these stalkers. Another spectacular looking unit with a big banner. There's one of the individual figures there. There's that huge banner. Certainly more interesting than just a flag and a pole, aren't they? Okay, we've got 3 sprues here. 2 of them are the same, one of them's different. Yes, these are looking very impressive indeed. Some nice ranged forces there. There's a couple of these sprues. Quivers. There's barbarian armour. Okay, a couple of leaders. We've got Jarl for the Nords. Beautiful looking figure. Wow, these resin leaders are really something. Look at that beautiful shield. And look at the detail there. Well, I think we're in safe hands here if they can come up with sculpts like that. This is very impressive indeed. There we go, look at that. That is really impressive. That's one of the best figures I've seen so far. This one's called the Blooded. Again, just gorgeous detail. A slightly small head for some reason, but then again he is a barbarian, so I expect him to be too smart. Lovely big sword. Great resin leader, that'll really stand out on the battlefield. And finally we've got this big guy. Comes in a big box, one big figure, but he's a giant. So he's got to be big. Oh wow, check this out. So we've got one of those huge bases, and look at the size of this huge sprue. Wow. Okay, this is really impressive stuff. Look at the detail of that rope. That's gorgeous. All the rope wrapped around there. That is going to paint up beautifully. He's holding this big tree. Wow. Look at that. Lovely stuff. Look at this thing. It's like a thing on the base. Wow. This is going to be one impressive figure. Where's his face? There it is. Well, lovely stuff. I do love a big figure, and that is going to look amazing on the tabletop. So that's the Nords. Well, there we go, folks. There's a look at some very cool stuff for Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings by Parabellum. As you can see, I've already been very busy putting all the miniatures together, and my next video will be taking you through the process of putting together the miniatures in the starter set. So stay tuned for that. As I said, there's going to be lots of coverage of Conquest on the Esoteric Order of Gamers. I'm going to give you my honest thoughts about the whole game, about the miniatures, about the way it plays, as I discover it myself. So stay tuned for all that. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much for watching the Esoteric Order of Gamers, orderofgamers.com. Don't forget to visit the website, subscribe to the channel, check out the social media stuff and all the rest of it. Thanks very much for watching, and bye for now.